The Pentagon chief says the U.S. will pre-position heavy equipment in several Eastern European countries to boost NATO presence. Ashton Carter said that Washington will spread about 250 tanks, armored vehicles, and other military equipment across 7 European nations. He said that the move is to reassure NATO states against, quote, threats from Russia and terrorist groups. His comments come one day after he announced that the U.S. would be contributing weapons, aircraft, and forces for NATO's new Rapid Reaction Force. This is the first time since the end of the Cold War that Washington stations heavy military equipment in newer NATO members. This comes amid tensions between Russia and NATO over the crisis in Ukraine. For months, Ukraine and Western governments have accused Russia of arming militia groups in eastern Ukraine and deploying troops there. Russia has repeatedly rejected any involvement in the crisis. Karen Kwiatkowski, former Pentagon official, joins us from Virginia. Karen Kwiatkowski, thanks for joining us at the Top 5. So let's look over here. There's lots of escalation that's happening. The most recent alarming one would be the deployment, from what we hear, of how Russia is reacting, and that's ballistic missiles. But then there are also reports about the U.S. to have or thinking of having ballistic missiles. Maybe you can tell us if it's already deployed in some of these NATO countries. Isn't this escalation just getting a little out of hand when nuclear-type materials are coming into play?
Well, it is frightening. And, you know, there is an aspect when nuclear weapons are involved that does help restrain both sides. I mean, this was the whole concept behind mutually assured destruction. We thought we stepped away from that after the Cold War. And so it looks like, yeah, we're moving back into it. I have to, you know, when we talk about the United States government, when we talk about NATO, when we talk about the concerns of the EU countries or whatever, we're talking about the government decisions. When you talk to the people in this country, and when you talk to the people in Europe, in Eastern Europe, they are not supportive of this. They are not clamoring for U.S. weapons to be deployed in the eastern parts of Europe. They're not, the people aren't. It's the governments that are doing this. And I think that's an important distinction to make. The American people are not supportive of more war. They're not supportive of stepping up into a new hot war with Russia in the European theater. That's not what Americans are interested in. So we have to make the distinction between what our government does and what the people are wanting in both Europe and America.
There's a camp, Karen Kwiatkowski, that believes that this is a U.S. motion towards some of these former Baltic or former Soviet countries that is pushing them into having U.S. heavy military equipment, for example, to be deployed, and posing them into this offensive posturing against Russia. And then some saying, well, you know what, this is not in U.S.'s back door and on U.S. soil. Is that the case? Is there a push by the U.S. in terms of the posturing that is going on? And, of course, that involves these NATO countries.
Well, certainly, the United States has been involved in the Eastern Europe in these colored revolutions, you know, in the orange, the pink, whatever, all the different colors. There's evidence that the United States, CIA, interested parties in this country have very much supported that. We've also pushed for expansion of NATO to include these countries, and that's happened for some years. That's happened really since the fall of the Warsaw Pact, in 1989, 1990. The United States government has looked to expand the role of NATO. And the Balkans War was the first big NATO war. This was encouraged and supported by the United States government. What's part of what we're seeing here is the pressure on U.S. politicians and the U.S. president of military marketers. The military-industrial complex needs to sell weapons. It needs to create a need for new weapons and new weapons lines. And we're seeing an exhaustion in the Middle East. That was our latest war, our latest consumption, so to speak, of U.S. military weaponry and spending. So as that draws down, it really is predictable that the United States government would be looking for new places to deploy weapons, new areas in which to justify military spending. And we're also seeing it on the Pacific side. We're seeing a little bit of this same kind. It looks like aggression. It looks like expansiveness empire even, but a lot of it has to do with the powerful push and pressure of the military-industrial complex to maintain its gravy train, to maintain its income in the face of no justification for it.
It's a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much, Karen Kwiatkowski, former Pentagon official there from Virginia. Thank you.